Welcome back, everybody, to the second session of today, Stateless Democracy and Self-Defense. I think or at least, of course, I'm predisposed to feel this, but I feel that this question of violence has been hanging over the discussion, at least yesterday and today, to a certain extent that if you at some point would want to assert yourself as a community in a state that does not want that, then this is a question that comes up rather rapidly. We have several organizations here and speakers in our midst that have traveled from very far and sometimes under very difficult conditions that can testify to that. And I think this is a very important aspect. So let me just very, very briefly introduce this panel. As I said, it's called Stateless Democracy and Self-Defense. Our first speaker today will be Zuhat Kobanî. He is the representative of the PYD in Europe. And there will be several people who will respond to him, and I really hope that we can develop a good conversation out of it. The first respondent will be Laila Khaled from the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, Jennifer McCann from Sinn Féin, and we have a flying mic somewhere over there in the hands of Gorka Elegabarrieta from Shortu from Basque Country. And obviously I hope that we can also find the time to get some questions from you, from the audience. But before I introduce you to our first speaker, I would like to say a few words about the thematic of self-defense, because I think it's important somehow to position this in somewhat of a clear way. I'm gonna make an attempt at this. And I'm apologizing, Laila, because I will use a few theoretical concepts also. In his famous essay, Critique of Violence, Walter Benjamin makes a distinction between the law-making function of violence pursued for natural ends, such as the establishment of a state through a constitution, and the law-preserving function of violence pursued for legal ends, such as the violence exerted by the state to preserve its laws. The police force, for example, especially in so-called democratic states, go beyond both functions. And I quote, "Police violence is emancipated from both conditions. Its lawmaking, for its characteristic function, is not the promulgation of laws, but the assertion of legal claims for any decree, and law-preserving because it is at the disposal of these ends." Benjamin calls both lawmaking and law-preserving violence mythical. It is mythical precisely in the sense that it creates narratives, myths around itself that are supposed to justify its otherwise unjustifiable violence. In Greek tragedy, the founding of a democracy based on slavery is mythologized through the judgments of Orestes on a hill in Athens. In American comedy, the founding of a military-industrial complex based on slavery is mythologized through the founding fathers. Contrasted with this mythical violence, we find a form of violence that Benjamin refers to as divine or sovereign violence. He gives two examples, and I think these two examples are very important and they're very much connected. The first example of self-defense is self-defense in the face of a murderous oppressor, a violence that breaks the mythical cycle of destroying states and rebuilding them. And I cite, "On the breaking of this cycle, maintained by mythical forms of law, on the suspension of law, with all the forces on which it depends as they depend on it, finally, therefore, on the abolition of state power, a new historical epoch is founded." Self-defense, if we follow Benjamin, is therefore fully antagonistic to the concept of the state. So self-defense is by definition targeted at the state. Perhaps we can say, and I would like to make this a possible starting point for the panel, but I imagine there are so many other ones. So a possible starting point could be that self-defense is by definition stateless. The second, and maybe even more important example of divine violence that Benjamin gives us is education. I quote again, "This divine power is attested not only by religious tradition, but is also found in everyday life. The educative power, which in its perfected form stands outside the law, is one of its manifestations. Thus, education and self-defense are correlative, codependent. It is impossible to educate and be educated without self-defense, and self-defense is impossible without education. What testifies to the existence and necessity of such a relation between self-defense, education, and the condition of statelessness are the current attempts of the state, of many states, to destroy educational systems. In the Netherlands, in Turkey, in the United States, in fact, everywhere. This makes the link between self-defense in terms of culture and in terms of violence all the more important, I think, for our discussion today. I also want to say something briefly about the space where we are. It has been commemorated several times by Jonas. We are here in the space where 6 Dutch provinces signed the Union of Utrecht, a free association of independent provinces to share resources in their struggle against a common oppressor, the Spanish Empire. This insurrection against oppression precipitated the beginning of the blossoming of Dutch art and culture, also known under the name of the Golden Age, which, by the way, also introduced massive slave trade, as was pointed out yesterday by a very astute member, I think, of the audience. The Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam prominently featured what is considered the masterpiece from this period. It's called The Night Watch by Rembrandt from 1642. This colossal, iconic painting, now the most important painting in the Netherlands, some say, shows us the militia company of the 2nd district of Amsterdam, that is a self-defense force organized by a free city against an imperialist oppressor, situated within an atmosphere of religious harmony, signaled by the brotherhood of the 2 main figures of the painting, the Protestant captain Frans Banning Kok and his Roman Catholic lieutenant Willem van Ruitenburg. It is more than ironic that during a recent publicity event accompanying the reopening of the Rijksmuseum, sponsored by a major corporate bank, the self-defense militia of Nightwatch was rebranded as a police force, chasing down in full ceremonial outfits a petty thief through the air-conditioned spaces of a shopping mall. This complete and perhaps willful misunderstanding of what a self-defense militia is and its perversion into a police force is perhaps iconic for the way in which the Netherlands has changed from a free union of independent stateless provinces founded on collective struggle against imperialism into a centralized police state that we find ourselves in today. To contemplate and to learn from another free union of independent provinces in a struggle against imperialist oppressors through self-defense, with an emphasis on continuous education, religious harmony, gender equality, and the belief in the crucial importance of statelessness, and this, of course, we will unpack, I think, with our other speakers as well. This brings me to our main speaker of today, which is Zuhat Kobanî, the representative of the PYD here in Europe. And I would glad to give him the microphone. He will be translated by the incomparable Sivan Said. Do you have a microphone? Yeah, good.
وحمويان سپاس دکن و ارگانیزاسیون و داره سپاس دکن که هم دعوتی و داره کرن جبوی گفتگویی کی تمدنها وره پیش خسته. بری ازارم و داره تلفونه که روجاوا را ماخذیم تابیبت یه پجی مگو گفتگویی که سر و پاراستنا و هم دخوازنه و بکن واناجی سلاوی خواج بوی و پلاتفورمشان. مجاری کنها هم نقاش دکن مجار نگرینگن مجاری گرینگ از دخوازم چند روجاوان دا بینم زمان جبوی کام بگن انجامه مجاره یکی که از دخوازم بینم زمان پرسکریکا جواکیه نه ایرو پرسکریکی کی یان ام ببجن دناوا کردان دایه پرسکریکی کی کود جهانه دا چندی هولدان هنه جبوی چاره سری بکن چاره سر نبیه اروپا جبوی و پرسکریکی چاره سر بکه گلک هولدان خوا کرن 400 سال خبات وانا کجبوی چاره سر کرنه دی گلک قوناغان را در باستون رونسانس چیکرن رفرم چیکرن یاسای قانونی نو درخستن دموکراسی گلک ناوین دموکراسی درخستن جمهوریت درخستن امپراتوری چیکرن انجام دا قریز چاره سر نبود تبی کو آستی امکان وانه پر له نه دیسا روشا ایرو کامتی دا kaosekil cihane heye piywistiya xwe çareserî. Dikkat bikin îro pirsgirêk hemû alî de heye. Di alî zanistê de pirsgirêk heye, di alî desthilatdarî de pirsgirêk heye, di alî perwerdê de pirsgirêk heye, di alî tenduristî de pirsgirêk heye. Hemû beşên jiyanê ku alaqedar dike pirsgirêk. İzem pirsgirêkekî mezin heye, divê ku em çareserî jê re peyda bikin. Esasî vê pirsgirêkê li goreyî me bingehê xwe ji kapital modernîtê digire. Eger li hember wê em nekine alternatîfekî, em alternatîfa kapital modernîtê çê nekin, em nikan çareserkirinê pirsgirêkan û ev mesela zorê ku em dixwazin nîqaş bikin çareser bikin. Kapital modernîst ser sê lingan xwe dipesêre. Yek ser dewleta netew, yek ser endüstriyalizm, yek jî ser ribhil azamî. Ev sîstema ku rabûyî dewleta netew bu sebeba ku şerên mezin çêbin, bi sebeba qirkirina gelek milletan çêbin. Diva dist salê dawî de encamê vê Merîkanê rehet bibîne. Endüstriyalizm jî bu sebeba ku îdina xeterî li ser cîhanê û ser jiyanê û ser tabiatê çêbin. و ji aliyekî din de ribhil azam jî bu sebeba ku birçîbûnekî millet bi milyaran însanê birçîl cîhanê çêbin. Ev sîstema dibe sîstema şer û pevçûnan dibe sîstema xerabûnê. Çendî navê xwe biguhere bike dewleta demokratîk, dewleta perlemanî, cumhuriyet, ev navana çareserî nayînin pirsgirêkê hîn alostir dikin. Ji bo vê jî em dixwazin alternatîfekî li hemberî vê wekî sîstemekî alternatîv bidin pêş. Sîstema alternatîv em didin pêş, lingên ku kapital modernîtê xwelserewkir li hember wê em sîstema demokratîk modernîtê dixwazin bidin pêş. Yek li şûn dewleta netew, dewleta qewmî em dixwazine netewa demokratîk be. Li şûne ku yek reng be, yek deng be, yek al be, piranî bi hev re jiyankirin be, ji ber ev bingehê xwe ji civakê û ji xezayê digire. Li şûn endüstriyalizmê, endüstriya ku kanibe bi ekolojî re bibe yek. Dalî ekonomî de jî ekonomiyekî ku kanibe pîwîstiyên civakê pêk bîne. Ev sîstema ku em didine pêş, esasî xwe bingehê xwe dide ser civakê. Çima em civakê didine pêş? Em ku muqarenakî basît navber civakê û dewletê de bikin, em ê bizanin bine ku lazim em civakê bidin. Yek dîroka dewletê ku mevî binêrê 5000 sal e. Ama dîroka civakê milyonan sal heye. Dewlet bê civak nikane jiyan bike, ama civak bê dewlet kane jiyan bike. Civakek bê tabaka, bê sinif kane jiyan bike. Fakat devletek bê tabaka nikane jiyan bike. Devlet bacaran da çêbiye, bacar bê gund nikane jiyan bike. Bê ziraat, gund bê bacar kane jiyan bike. Eger ku merî bi vî rengî lê binêre, civak esas e ji bo wê jî em sîstema xwe konfederalizma civakî li ser civakê datînin. Nuxtak din ez dixwazim belî bikim çima konfederalizma civakî em dibêjin. Em li civakê dinêrin beşekî tabiatê. Jêre tê gotin tabiata zindî, tabial heye. Ji aliyekî din re jî dibêjin tabiata dewemîn. Dîqet bikin tabiat tiştekî konfederal e. Di hindirî ew ê de, di hindir civakê de jî çawa ku tabiat konfederal e, civak jî heman reng e konfederal e. Sîstema ew ê, sîstema dewleta netewê nikane xwelser civakê bide meşandin. Ji civakê re ters dikeve. Civak nava xwe da civakekî polîtîk ahlaqî ye. Dikkat bikin civakên destpêkê civakên ahlaqî polîtîk bûn. Ji niha bîtir. Polîtîka çê ye? Nîqaşkirin e û qirarstandin e. Ahlaq çê ye? Biryarên ku tu distînî ji bo bi qiralan tu pêk bînî. Civakên berê bi hev re nîqaş dikirin, li gundan binêrin, li eşîran binêrin nîqaş çê dibû. Aniha di hindir dewletê de civak nîqaş nake, teniya hinek desthilatdarin ew nîqaş dikin, îrada gel winda kirine. Ji bo vê jî armanca me ku em carekî din civakekî ahlaqî polîtîk bidin avakirin. Ev nîqaşên nava civakê de wernekirin, em bawerin wê bibe gavekî ji bo ku berve civaka ahlaqî polîtîk de biçe. Wê vaye bibe daxtekî li ser dewletê ji bo balansa ku navber dewlet û civakê de werî çêk. Ji ber dewlet biye losyan e. Yani êrişên dike, şerên dike haye civaka xwe jê tin. Di hindir civakê de mesela di hindir civakê de problema parastina rewa tiştekî xezayî ye. Ji ber me got civak beşekî xezayê, di hindir xezayê de jî parastina rewa, parastina cewherî tiştekî xezayî ye. Dîqet bikin di hindirî xezayê de her nebatek, her heywanek sîstemekî xwe parastinê heye. Gul bi istiriyê xwe diparêze. Gelek heywan hinek bi reva xwe beza xwe, hinek jî bi sîstemê xwe parastinê xwe. Eger ku sîstema parastinê were zeîfkirin xerab bibe, fesad çê dibe, îdina muqaweme nemîne, yani berve xerabûnê dibe. İnsan di alîwî sîstema parastinê hene. Wek kainekî biyolojî ye xwe biparêze, ji aliyekî din de jî kainekî civakî ye, wek civak jiyan dike xwe biparêze. جبوی وی کیجی ایریشن لسر جواک ورن جواک مجبوره کوکی خزای که یعنی بشه کی خزای اوج خوب پارید به درکتنا کاپیتال مدرنیته را چه بیتر ایریشن لسر جواک گلک بویت خو بعد خو گرت نتند عالی فیزیکی دا امحاب که عالی جینوساید کی جنسی دا جینوساید کی کلتری دا جینوساید کی جواکی دا جینوساید کی همو عالیان دا برخوا وظیفه پاراستنا جوهری دی عالی دا ته گوهراند جبوی ویجی پیویس دکه کل همبر با سیستما کد خازه جواک همو عالی داگیر بکه جینوساید کی همو عالی پیک بینه لازم ات پاراستنا ته همو عالی دا وری چیکر اواجی جواک کوانی بھی یک د عالی زانسته دا جواک زاناب کی د جواک بکی سازی مؤسسات همو بشوي دا مجاره می کو پاراستن ل روجاوای کردستان او پیوستیا و هي ام به نزدیکونه نزدیکی روجاوا بو دقت بکن ل روجاوای کردستان او ل سوریه ام نکتنه بلوکن یان ایکو دولتین در و دخازن مداخله سوریه بکن آن رژیمه خطا می سیسیان جوه درکت جبرکو مداخله یک دخواستن که سوریه برنگی که اسلام سیاسی سنی بدن پیش هنک کنج دخواست دولت قومی یعنی آکو منها رخنه کری وی هنک رفورمی بچوک چه بکن وی بپارزین انجام و هر دو پروژانه ایرو گل سوری جواک سوری ضرر دبین ایرو لسوریه 300,000 کشتی ہے سوریه 300,000 بریندار ہے 300,000 وندایی ہے 300,000 گرتی ہے د سوریه دا 3 میلیون مال هاتی روخاندنه 10 میلیون زیادتر کوچبر به 6 میلیون کوچبر هندره چارجی زیادتر چونه ده انجام سیاستی کو دولت لگوری بلوک خوددن مشاندن اف انجام سوریه ده درکت ورد ام وای مقارنه بکن انجام شر کووانا ددن پیش ل روجاوا چه درکت روجاوا یک مگوت ام وقت پاراستنا روا ام اشخار اساس بکن دفاع مشروع یعنی نها کو ام بنرند انجام ده اف خطا مگرتی هیچتی کو جواک وره پاراستن دوده جواک ببه سازی و زانا ببه حتی نها نفوس سوری 23 میلیونن روجاوا 23 میلیونان 3 میلیونان حتی 4 میلیونان چید که کل گوره 300,000 سوریه چه مری نسوا کردان کو بگیره لازمه 50,000 کشتی 45,000 کشتیش کردان هبا فقط نال روجاوای کردستان ده هندر ویشری 5 سالان دا 4,000 شهید یعنی سیستم پاراستنا روا دلینه کو کشتی کم ببین او لهمبری وجی سیستم مدل کی چاوا خجیان بکه مبره وابر ام باورن کو اف سیستما گاف ایدنا باوری گلانجی پیچه دبه ام دوی قناعته دانه مدل کو به خطا مدای پیش وقت سوریه ده دبه مدل کی کو چاوا ام ایدنا گل کانه خبره وابه او نیرینه کو گل نکانه خبره وابه مشکینان و اواج بو بنگه کی کو زمینه کی انترناسیونالیزم کی نوره وکرن بنگه بلوکا دموکراتیک پیشنگتیا یه پی جدهات چیکرن لهمبری بلوکا فاشیزان ایکو داعش سرکشی دکه وقت شر جهان دیدیان دا چاوا کو پیشنگتیا شورشگرین یونان و اسپانان دا بلوکا دموکراتیک ها چیکرن ایروجی د قرن 21 دا د پیشنگتیا روجاوا دته اوای بخوره نتیجه درخواستن خازم دسه نتیجه ام بجه بر دگوتن تن دولت کانه مرام بپاریزه قناعت وسابو اوای نراس درکت گل کو تنظیم بکه تفگر بکه گل کانه خو بپاریزه جوا کانه خو بپاریزه لهمبر داعش دولت بن کفتن اما اراده گل اراده جواک بسر کرد یاد دیان گل نکانه خبره و به قدرتنه هنگ دولت کسنه دستلادار کانه وانا بره اف جمرات کر نه گل کانه خو تفگر بکه ریوبریا خو چید که مدل خو سریا دموکراتیک روجاوا ارنگا و ایرو دنیا گیش کیجی وای شاهد بینه جبوی کولما گهدار کرم سپاس دکش بر زمان مکم تنه مدوی زمانی دا گوتم 20 دقیقه مدان 20 دقیقه مخلص
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Zuhat. Thank you, Zuhat, for a very clear and very succinct articulation of the notion of self-defense in the struggle of the Kurds in Rojava. It was very precise, and I really appreciate. Also, thank you for keeping to the time. I think what is a very interesting thing that you said. Many things were interesting, but one of the ideas that you voiced is that your notion of self-defense is directed not to the state, but to what you called capitalist modernism. So the nation-state is part of this, but you also target industrialism and a certain type of financialized economy. I would like to turn then these ideas to our first respondent, which is Leila Khaled. Leila Khaled has been a member of the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine and its forerunner since 1959. She was born in Haifa in Palestine, but her family was expelled during the Nakba, the Palestinian exodus of 1948, when she was 4 years old. Khaled is most known for the hijacking of 2 airplanes in 1969 and 1970 to raise international awareness for the oppression of the Palestinian people and demand the release of political prisoners. She is also a member of the Palestinian National Council, the legislative body of the Palestinian Liberation Organization, and a regular speaker at the World Social Forum. I think we would be very honored if you would share with us your history and your ideas on self-defense, and especially on a question I think that also came up yesterday, which is really like, who is a terrorist to whom, and who decides who is a terrorist? I think that this is a question that always looms over a discussion where there's a struggle against terror. That it's always, and you see this in terms of Kurds, you see this in terms of the struggle of the Palestinians, you see this in the struggle of the Irish. It's always easily turned around. So maybe you could also speak a little bit about that. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm honored to be among you, and for the organizers, thank you very much to give me this opportunity to speak to you on new subjects. But I was not dreaming of getting a visa. But I told our comrades, a miracle happened in the beginning of this year that I got a visa to Holland. So thank you very much. Let me say I didn't expect to be a part of a conference that speaks about something very theoretical. Stateless democracy. This is something very new to me. And I studied history, and I'm a Marxist. I'm educated with Marxism. Yet this is the first time I hear such terminology about democracy. The participants who yesterday spoke, they defined democracy just as a definition from the Greek language, the rule of people. Then let us question ourselves. Have we witnessed up till now, in the 21st century, have we witnessed the rule of people? I give an answer, I doubt. The democracy we are speaking about, the rule of people means the majority of the people. And the classes in the society that have an interest in democracy. While what we are seeing, or we witnessed up till now, we see democracy for the ruling class and not for the people. So this is not democracy. Classes that rule in the, like the West and US, powerful states, it's for the corporations that they own and not for the people. Still now, in the West, they are speaking about the medical care. It's when there is democracy, then there is medical care for the people. So until now, it's discussed in many countries. So it's not the example that we are looking for. We are looking for democracy that ensures human rights, not like what they say across the ocean, human rights there. They accuse everybody that it's not defending human rights. But according to what the policies, human rights in the United States differs from human rights in Palestine and Syria and China also. They look upon it that it's violation, while to occupy another country is not violation in their thinking. So we have to test the words, and to test the word democracy. Is it implemented as it is defined? Again, I say no, it's not. And where democracy begins? Is it by elections? I don't think I think that democracy is a way of life, and it begins from the beginning in our families. If we are not democratic in our families, we cannot build a system, a democratic system also. We cannot build a democratic system if we are not sensitive, gender sensitive. Women are half of the societies in most countries, yet still we are discussing the issue of women and rights of women and the position of women in societies. I'm not going to continue speaking about the definition, but in the heart of this definition, it is social justice and social economy. The wealth in this world is for 1% of the people in the world, and the 99%, they are not enjoying real wealth of their countries. Then those who are pretending that they are democratic, I think they are the terrorists, because they are invading our minds, or they are trying to invade our minds with their values, the values of capitalism, the values of globalization, the values of exploitation, the values of oppression of the peoples of the world, as we see. Now, I came from a place where it's on fire. It's in Palestine, it's in Syria, it's in Iraq. And it's not an incident that we see that all this region is on fire. In Palestine, it's Israel there. And it's doing its job, just killing people by suspicion to kill, and they are doing it every day. Every day in Palestine these days, since 3 months, 3 people are killed, every day. And now they reach to about 178 people, mainly children. And we know why it's children. Because this state that pretends that it's the democratic oasis in the Middle East is killing the Palestinian children in thinking that the new generation will also fight this occupation. And they are killing our children. Can you imagine if they see a child with his bag on his back coming from school? They suspected that they have stones, so they shot them dead. One of them did not die. If anybody have the opportunity to see that child called Ahmad Manasra, now he is 14. he was 13 when he was shot, and all the soldiers were saying, die, die, die. And it was on YouTube. Everybody saw it. In Israel, a child is from 1 to 14, while it's internationally, it's from 1 to 18. And if they catch him or detain him when he is 12, they wait 2 years and they take him to court. This child was 13 and something. Now he ended his 14, he is 14. They took him to the court. And even when this child was interrogated, we have seen a video when the two people, the Israelis, are interrogating him, and he was saying, I don't remember. I don't remember. When they asked him, he says, I don't remember. Then they were beating him, and they told him, now you can remember. This, we have seen it. I don't know how it came out, but I'm giving the example of a state that was built and established by a resolution from the United Nations. That was after the Second World War. What happened in Europe by the Nazis, we were punished as Palestinians, not retaliating against the Nazis, while retaliating against us, and on the basis of justice, the United Nations had a resolution to partition Palestine to 2 states without asking us. And before that, the Zionist movement worked hard to make the world believe its lie that Palestine is a land without people to a people without a land, by which they meant that no Palestinians were living there, and the Jews, as citizens of other countries, have the right to come to Palestine and live there, and forcing the people of Palestine to leave. And this is what happened. Now, I'm born in Haifa. I'm not allowed to go. Maybe many of you can go and see it. I can't see it. And other 6 million Palestinian refugees are not allowed to go back to their homeland. Although there is another United Nations resolution, 194, that was in 1947, that the Palestinians have the right to go back. Israel has to accept the return of the Palestinians to their homeland and properties that we were forced to leave them in 1948. But Israel did not abide by that up till now. And Israel considers itself above international law. Until this moment, since 68 years, Israel was built on our expense, in our homes, in our land, and we are deprived and denied the right for return. And the United Nations, that calls and was established to solve the problems of the people and the conflicts in the world, gave the right to a movement, the Zionist movement, and I'm in Holland speaking about Zionism. This movement is a racist movement, built an apartheid state, it's Israel, building a wall on the Palestinian land for security reasons, as they say always, for security reasons, as if we are attacking. We are defending ourselves because we are under occupation. And occupation is terrorism. It's the highest peak of terrorism, it's occupation. Occupation the land, occupation the people, and denying the right for the people to be on their land. We, as Palestinians, offered a solution. And that solution is to build a democratic state in Palestine where we can live all together on basis of equal rights and duties. Of course, they refused it. So the Palestinians tried from the beginning that this occupation cannot end without facing it with the people's right for resistance. And this is not a Palestinian invention to hold arms. It's the human invention. Where there is occupation, there is resistance. And it is also legal. So the violence that Vincent was saying about, speaking about it, it should be faced not with roses. There is legal violence and there is illegal violence. Occupation is illegal, always in history, now and yesterday, and if it will in the future, it's illegal. While and it is terrorism. They are the ones to create terrorism. When people resist, their media denies it for the people to resist, and they label us as terrorists. Now, can you imagine yourself, a bulldozer coming to your house and destroy it, like what's happening in Palestine every day? Now there are 15,000 houses where families are living in. The bulldozers are coming to destroy them. How would you react as human beings? How we react? A house that is built with sweat from the workers, the owners of those houses. They build room by room, not at once. And the family is in the street. Many examples I can give when the people put a tent and the Israelis come and also destroy the tent. They want them to live in the streets. This means that the world have a deaf ear. I'm not speaking about the people and the progressive forces, no. I'm speaking about governments. And this global system that defends injustice and violates human rights. I don't expect anyone, a sane human being, to accept that his home is destroyed because the other one is more powerful. It means that one should defend himself. To defend yourself, you use all the means in your hand. You have a knife, you use it. You have a stone, you use it. You have a Kalashnikov, you use it. Because violence, reactionary violence, should be met by revolutionary violence also. Why not? This is our right. And at the same time, we are offering still offering the human and democratic solution for this historical conflict. It's a democratic state in Palestine where all of us can live on equal basis in rights and duties. It took us 25 years to convince our people that we are not against the Jews. The Jews are human beings with a Jewish religion, and all religions we respect. But it took time for us to educate our people that Zionism is not a religion. It's a racist movement, and it's a reactionary movement. But still, we need more and more to educate our people that we can live together. But when? Not at this moment when our children, our young chaps are killed in the streets just by suspicion because they are suspected to throw a stone or to have a knife. And the jails now are full to the extent that the Department of the Prisons in Israel are saying that we don't have any more space. Now they are about 8,500 prisoners, including women and children. This is the way that makes our conscience and our mind think about words like democracy. We can't build democracy without a state. It's just something theoretical. Maybe what our comrade spoke about it. This is only a step by defending yourself in front of any attack. And what is really, I didn't hear it from yesterday, nobody is speaking about ISIS. This is the tool of the imperialists. They are using it like they founded the Qaeda, Osama bin Laden and the Qaeda. Now this they want to, and they used it and it's enough. Now Daesh or ISIS. So when we speak about destroying societies, we have to focus on why in this time that ISIS is spreading. This is a big question also. I think I have to stop now. Thank you very much, and I'll abide by.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much, Laila, for a wonderful intervention. And I think that there are many things to build on in what you said. For example, when you said that occupation is the highest form of terrorism, I had to think that actually the word terrorism and terror itself, they are related to the word territory, right? So the idea of territory itself already presumes a certain amount of terror, and I think this is something we could maybe keep in mind. However, you made a very clear statement that I would maybe like Zuhat, maybe if you would like to respond, is the very clear statement that you say we cannot have democracy without a state, and I think that this is obviously at the core of our discussion here today. So I would really. While at the same time I see many overlaps between the way you conceptualize your struggle. So this really seems to be a very particular point of difference. So maybe, Zuhat, you would like to respond to this particular point before I would like to go to the next respondent who is already waiting. Yes, please, yeah.
سپاس نهال به دره نیرین نو هم در دخن پیش و نیرین جی بنگه و دیروکی هم اساس دگرن برز لیلا جی داخفتن خدا گو دولت تشتی کده مشاندن آنتی دموکراسی یعنی همو پیکاتی خواهد پیکار بنی خواهد ام دیروکی بنیرن جرکو که دولت هاتی چکرنه حتی اینها دولت نکانه دموکراسی پیک بینه جبر آرمانجا دموکراسی آزادی وکهویه دولت به نکانه بی لی دولت کانه به آلیکار قسمه کی اوه بگلک ناوان خدانه دیار کرنه نابلی کرنه دولت دموکراتیک دولت پارلمانی دولت گلک نوعی و صفات لی کرنه فقط به صفاتنا هموجی حتی نها اف پرسکریک چاره سر نکرنه آلوزی زیادتر کرنه شدت زیادتر پیش تابر نقطه کدن از خازم بالای بکشینن لدربای دولته پیکاتین دروی دولت مانه جواکی دروی دولت مانه عشرین دروی دنوا خدا کانبونه بشکی دموکراتی بپارستانه پیک بانیان جبر کاراکتری چهبونه دولت سر فائد الانتاجه جبوی وی کجی نممکنه دموکراتی بینه و بخوره شدت بینه جبوی دستلاداری خورد فقط لازم انواع فرمیلی که وسا نزدیک ببین دولت پلوس دموکراسی ام وای بیرنگی چقاسی دموکراسی زیاده به دولت تنگ دبه چقاسی دولت زیاده به دموکراسی تنگ دبه جبوی ویجی هم دخوازن دموکراسی فرهتر به سپاس
Thank you. Thank you. So, I mean, it seems here again we come back to the distinction that was already made in the previous panel, which is the difference between the government and the state. So I think again here we have to make clearly this separation. At the same time, I would let me put it like this. There is something I think that should be articulated with it, which is that on the one hand, as I said, I mean, you share many similar viewpoints in the way that you approach your struggle. At the same time, it is very clear for all of us to see that they are happening in very different conditions, in very different territorial situations, and at the same time must therefore find ways to deal with problems that appear at very particular moments in time. When we were talking this morning, Jennifer made the comment that while we may be completely stuck in our own very specific struggle, at the same time there seems to be this circulation between struggling movements that learn from each other, that take over from each other, and maybe this is also some aspect I think that is very important to emphasize, that it's not only about this very specific, as you said, theoretical differences, which I think that in the end, I imagine that a lot of practices could be implemented in a future Palestinian state that they are developing, and that the way that you talk about struggle has actually been implemented by them as well, before they had liberated parts of northern Syria. So I would like to give the microphone to Jennifer. Jennifer McCann is from Sinn Féin. She has been an elected member of the Northern Ireland Assembly for the Irish Republican Party since 2007. Sinn Féin is a democratic socialist and currently second largest party in the Northern Ireland Assembly. McCann was imprisoned as a member of the IRA as a political prisoner for over 10 years in the Armagh jail and in the Maghaberry women's prison during the 1980s. I think maybe this is also an aspect that you could address in your presentation, in your response. And at the same time, there's a very particular situation in Ireland at the moment that they are confronted with the 100-year centennial commemoration of the Dublin Commune, which brings about, again, the question of nationhood in this case, and the way of commemorating liberational struggle. So maybe this is also something you would like to address. Thank you.
First of all, I'd just like to thank the organisers for inviting me here today to talk about our experience. I have been told that our accents sometimes can be very difficult for people to understand, so I'm going to try and speak as slowly. We do tend to speak quite fast in Belfast, but I'll try and speak as slowly as I can. I think, as Vincent said earlier, we were talking, and Leila and Gorka here from the Basque Country, and I suppose, as you mentioned, while no two struggles and no two conflicts are the same, there's certainly been relationships have built up, particularly between the Irish people and the Palestinian people, and the Irish people and the people from the Basque Country, and indeed other people that I have heard speaking the Kurdish movement. I have met with people from that movement also, and we do, even I suppose in sense that while there's no conflict now in Ireland, that really we still, many members of our party travel right across the world. We go to, and recently we have been in Colombia as well. Just to, and it's not as I said, because no two struggles are the same, no two peace processes are the same, but it's just to try and, give our experience of our conflict and give our experience of how we are where we are today, and I'll come to that when I'm finishing up at the end of my talk. I suppose, as Vincent said, I want to start at the very beginning almost, and it's not to give people a history lesson here, because I'm sure you know the history of our country. But, given that this year is the 100th anniversary of the 1916 Easter Rising in Ireland, I think, it's very apt in terms of what we have, and I've listened to the discussions over yesterday and today. But for us and for Irish Republicans, that was one of the clear indications, that we were actually saying we were wanting to overthrow the British Empire, but overthrow the occupation of our country. And what those handful of people did in 1916, to go out to have the proclamation. And the proclamation, really, the whole basis of the proclamation was cherishing all the children of the nation equally. It was about equality, it was about social justice, and there was also, it was also about gender equality as well, because for the first time, women were actually mentioned in the proclamation, Irish men and Irish women. So I think that it was it's a very, very important sort of historical place for us to be in this year, in 2016, as we go into the 100th anniversary. And I know even as I'm here this weekend, we have where the leaders actually at the end of when they were coming together, they didn't want to cause any more bloodshed, they said, and they were sort of negotiating their between themselves their surrender. And really, that was in Moore Street, 16 Moore Street. And as we stand now today, this weekend, the Irish government in the south are looking to demolish one of the key places in Irish history. And I think that there is now an occupation of Moore Street, and there's a big rally there tomorrow, which unfortunately we'll miss. But again, as I said, that and I want to come on to that and later, just where the heads of the Irish, the southern state is at the moment. Really, I suppose in terms of then we had the 1916 Rising, we had the execution of the leaders, and then we had partition. And really, in partition, it divided the north and the south of Ireland. And it divided the 6 counties, and the 6 counties were very, very clearly still under British occupation. And because of that partition, there has been, throughout the decades to the recent conflict which ended in 1994, we basically had other sort of uprisings and that, but again, as I said, they were all centred around partition, and as we were talking earlier, a response to that partition. But going into our more recent conflict, and I want to sort of make this the sort of similarities here, because we talked about terrorism earlier. And it's that definition, because very, very often we in the Republican movement, in the IRA, have been sort of put out there right across the world as being the terrorists in the conflict. And I want to sort of try to tell people now how that was never the case. and where that resistance came from and where that struggle came from in terms of where it was a response to oppression and the oppression from the British state. So obviously the late 1960s, inspired by other places like the US and other places, we had the civil rights movement, which came about in the north of Ireland. And that was basically a movement that came together to challenge discrimination against nationalists, against Republicans and against Catholics. We had a northern state from its inception in 1921-22, basically was a state that discriminated against one side of the population. And that discrimination was right through in housing rights, it was right through in terms of jobs, in education, and they even created a system, we call it gerrymandering, but they created a system where even people who were trying to elect members onto what was called the state then, when they were trying to elect members, they actually tinkered with the electoral system so there could only ever be a one-party state. There was only ever a one-party state. And I know it didn't matter what way you voted, because of the way they tinkered with the system, there was always just a one-party majority state. And again, that one-party majority state had the whole apparatus of the legal system behind it, had the whole apparatus of policing behind it and justice, and had the whole apparatus of all those other things that actually kept that state going, discriminating and treating another section of the community totally totally unequally. And what we had as part of that state then was the B Specials and the RUC, which were the Royal Ulster Constabulary, which was policing at that time. But we also had a formation of a loyalist group in the late 60s as well. This was all around the same time of the civil rights movement. And we had that loyalist organisation like a paramilitary force, another arm of the state and supported by the state. And what they did was they carried out a bombing campaign, and they carried out shootings of Catholics in 1966. You've heard of the people that were shot then, I'm sure. We had also then a Battle of the Bogside in 1969, where we had hand-to-hand fighting with police, because police and the B Specials would have attacked marchers that were out in civil rights campaigns and marching for their civil rights. And in Belfast, we had a particularly violent programme in terms of we had those loyalists, paramilitary forces, along with the B Specials and along with the police force at that time, attacking Catholic homes and burning Catholics out of their homes, and indeed shooting Catholics dead. And that's what was, if you like, sparked off the conflict that we saw for years in the north then. And really what Republicans and what the IRA did was defend themselves. Not defend themselves, but defended their community. That there was no one else there to defend the local people who were getting bombed out of their homes, who were getting shot at, because the whole state was against, or was lining up to actually attack Catholics, attack nationalists and attack Republicans. So that, you know, when they call us terrorists, that's what we were born out of in those days. And, you know, coming into then, and I'm going to just concentrate a wee bit because Vincent has asked me, in West Belfast at that time, we had curfews, and we had also curfews in other parts of the north. But right across the north, we had special powers acts. We had internment where people could be arrested and interned without trial. We had a conveyor belt system that actually imprisoned people for long, long years. We had something like 25,000 Republicans went through the jails through the conflict, which was quite a high percentage given, you know, we are an island of 6.5 million, and in the north there's 1.5. So we had really basically those special powers where you had non-jury courts. You were tortured during interrogations in Castlereagh and Gough Barracks and other barracks. You had British Army on the streets. West Belfast was one of the most militarised zones when I was growing up as a child there. than anywhere else in Western Europe. You couldn't go from A to B without getting stopped by armed British soldiers, and you know, that there was the reality of what people had to grow up into. You had shoot-to-kill policies by the British state. You had the use of plastic bullets. Many children were killed by plastic bullets. So you had all those sort of human rights abuses and the state-sponsored violence. You also had a level of collusion, which is only really getting exposed now in terms of families bringing cases through coroners' courts or bringing cases to Europe. So you had either the state directly killing people, or you had the state indirectly killing people by the use of the death squads in the loyalist paramilitaries. So that was the situation that you had, and that was the situation that people were fighting against, were fighting against the oppression and repression. And I just want to touch a bit then on terms of the prisons. We had, when we had internment, we had what was called special category status, which meant prisoners who went into jail had a special sort of political status. And Margaret Thatcher and others obviously tried to take that away from the prisoners in 1976. And the prisoners who went in, particularly, I was in Armagh Women's Prison, and we were lucky as women that we were able to wear our own clothes. But the men in the H blocks of Long Kesh had to wear, they were trying to force them to wear a uniform, and they refused to do it. So the jail system then became another side of struggle for Republicans, in that they suffered the brutality of being beaten, and they suffered the brutality of being strip searched. They suffered the brutality of having to lie in their cells for years without being able to go to the toilet, without being able to wash, and without being able to see family members. So that brutality in those prisons resulted in the men embarking on a hunger strike in March of 1981. And, you know, I tell this story because, you know, people sometimes say, you know, about, you know, and I will say, when I was speaking to Lila earlier, she was one of my heroes whenever, you know, in the 70s and that. And people would talk to me about Bobby Sands. And I know for a lot of people, Bobby Sands, you know, even at home, you know, for a lot of our young people, is inspirational, and, you know, would be up there with all sort of, you know, personal heroes that people have. And I knew Bobby. I was very, very lucky to know Bobby. He was a friend, and I was a friend of the family. And Bobby Sands was just an ordinary person. He was someone who cared about his community. He was someone who totally cared about his comrades in the jail, and that was why Bobby wanted to be the first one to go on hunger strike, because Bobby knew that people were going to die on hunger strike. He knew that, you know, they were dealing with a government and a state who was totally intransigent and didn't care what was happening. So he knew, and that was one of the reasons that he took on to go on the hunger strike first. And we know that Bobby wasn't, unfortunately, the only one to die, that there was 10 of his comrades died on hunger strike as well. And that was a really, really difficult time within the prisons. But the prisons were places, as I said, of brutality. They were places, you know, where people, and very, you know, some people were very, very young when they went to prison. I mean, you're talking 15, 16, 17-year-olds going away for long periods of time, being in and beaten during interrogations. And a lot of people, you know, forced to sign confessions to things that they didn't even do. So, you know, you had that real brutal system there. But just to go on, I suppose, in terms of where we are now, because I know Vincent wanted me to talk a little bit about that as well. And, you know, we did, in 1994, we had, we sort of had the IRA ceasefire. And what the ceasefire did was the ceasefire created a space, if you like. There had been ongoing peace talks taking place. And you've heard of the Hume Adams talks, and our leader, Gerry Adams, was part of those talks, as some of our other party leaders were. And we took those talks then further and went into negotiations with the British government. and negotiations with the unionist parties in the north as well. And I suppose that those risks were taken and initiatives were taken to try and give a space, to try and build a confidence and to try to sort of create a space, if you like, to get that peaceful sort of way to try and end partition, if you like, beyond that. And where we got to then was we had the international agreement. Probably the most well-known one was the Good Friday Agreement in 1998. And then we had subsequent agreements in terms of the St Andrews agreements and other agreements. And that has taken us, I suppose, today, for our party, we have had great electoral success. But it's just not about electoral success for election's sake. Because just all during the conflict, communities in areas that were facing that repression actually became very, very strong, vibrant communities. And I just want to give one example. In West Belfast, for instance, because of the situation during the curfew situation and during those other sort of times when it wasn't safe to really come out onto the streets or whatever, they used to take, the bus services off, and they used to leave people without sort of services in terms of food and that. So what the people did on their own, they came together and created cooperatives. They created a transport system, which is still there today. I don't know if any of you have been over, but it's the black taxis. And that's where the black taxis come out of. It was just necessity for people because people in those days didn't have cars, and it was just to get them from A to B. So all those initiatives were taken. And one of the big initiatives for me that was taken during those days, because it was quite a lot of the men who were interned and quite a lot of the women who the men who went to prison. And therefore women started organising, in terms of being the ones who was being a response to the repression, a response to the oppression. And it was actually women who broke the Falls Road curfew, where women come out and took on the British Army and says, no, you will not tell us to go back into our house. We need to feed our families. We need to see what's happening to our neighbours. We need to find out, what's going on, and we have a right to walk our streets and do that. So it was women who broke the curfew. It was women who broke many, many other in terms of marches, for instance. We had the first march ever into Belfast city centre. Nationalists were not allowed, or Republicans were not allowed, that space in the city centre. On International Women's Day, women actually took to the streets, and they were the first ones to push through and get through to the city centre. So I think that in terms of women's and gender equality, for me, it all came from then. And what we also had was we had women on the loyalist Protestant side meeting with women on the Republican Catholic side, coming together, and I suppose to fight issues that were actually that were sort of important to them. So you had that unification there long before you even had where the conflict was over. But I suppose that's basically the story that I want to tell, and and I'll take any questions that people want to ask. We are, as I said, facing into 2016 and the 100th anniversary of the Rising, and particularly the 100th anniversary of the proclamation, which is very, very important. And really, for us as Republicans, that's still where we want to be. We want to end partition. We want to have Ireland unified. We believe that it doesn't make economic sense, it doesn't make social sense, and it certainly doesn't make political sense to have a country of 6.5 million where one small part of it is still occupied by the British state. And in terms of the economy, it's very, very clear also that we have two different tax systems. We have two different health systems. We have two different education systems. We have two different currencies. We have two different systems right across policing and justice. And what we're trying to do is join those two systems more together in a working relationship now, so that we're trying to look in terms of creating that all-island economy. But the important thing for us is to end partition of our country, and to have that proclamation that they went out with, cherishing all the children of the nation equally, and we want to see that, and that's where we're trying to go to now. So thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Again, time is running very fast. So I would like to go quickly to Gorka Elegebarrieta. Gorka. Gorka is responsible for the international relations for the Basque political party Sortu, which means create, and they are the first political party in the Ezker Ezbertzalea, the patriotic left in Basque country. Gorka, I'm going to ask you something very concrete. You have listened to like 3 very different narratives that nevertheless seem to, at crucial points, overlaps in the ways in which these 3 different movements conceptualize their struggle. On the one hand, how would you relate it to the struggle of the Basque people? And on the other hand, what would be questions that we can start formulating to ask ourselves about states and statelessness, the question of the role of democracy in it, and self-defense in relation to this dichotomy between states and statelessness? Yeah.
Yeah. So
it's a lot. I'm sorry.
I share this panel with a Kurdish, a Palestinian, and an Irish comrade in a room where an insurrection took place against Spain. So the first thing I have to say is that I feel at home. Then, we are stateless nations. That is a fact. Not for the Irish. But we didn't choose to be stateless. We are grown-up people, and grown-up peoples as well. We long ago left kindergarten. Yeah. And we think and we want to take responsibility for ourselves. And not for the sake of doing it. We believe we can promote, we can create a better world. In the sense of what we are discussing now, I have to say that violence has always been used as an excuse to prevent political agendas from being developed. We were always told by the Spanish and French authorities that we have to choose between voting ballots and ballots, and that in what they call, or what is called, their democracy, every political goal could be defended peacefully. And we knew that was not true, and the recent developments in the Basque Country have proven us right. The same could be said about Catalonia, for instance, or others. Nancy yesterday said that the spying law in the US was a bad law then and a bad law today. And I can think that we will all agree if I say that proscription and listing of national liberation movements is the same. It was a bad decision then, a decision that gave even greater levels of impunity to states against national liberation movements. But it is a big problem today, a big problem that is creating many difficulties for dialogue spaces to be built up. It can be said that about my country, but also about Colombia, Palestine, Philippines, and many others. Self-defense. I think we should not understand self-defense only as a defense mechanism. We were not born here just to resist. We believe a better world can be created. And in that sense, we have to promote all kinds of different initiatives in order to reach a more just and equal society. We are democratic movements, and we truly believe that the best way to develop such processes, to resolve such conflicts, is through dialogue and negotiation, to reach agreements with your enemies or opponents. But what do you do when you face a government that doesn't want to talk to you, that doesn't want to agree with you, that is making your life and that of your people miserable every single day? What do you do? Wait. No, I mean, we are fed up of waiting. We have been waiting for too long. And I think that what we are seeing today going on in Kurdistan, in Catalonia, in Ireland, Basque Country, and elsewhere is the result of that. We are at the same time promoting very dynamic networks where many people from different sectors are participating. But at the same time, we are doing it unilaterally, without waiting for the permission of the states. And I just want to end up by saying that we have always have to bear in mind two equally important dimensions. The first one is the work you develop in your own country. And the second one is the one you develop internationally. I believe international solidarity and cooperation between national liberation movements, stateless nations, and progressive forces is positive for all of us. There is no one-size-fits-all solution to everybody. So if for the Kurdish, stateless democracy is the right path, good for them. If for us it is to create an independent state, good for us. But we have many things in common. And I think that what we should try to reflect on is how we can help each other, because otherwise these kind of forums are empty words. And we need to try and find ways of cooperating. And there is cooperation. There is a lot of spaces of cooperation. We know each other and help each other for ages. So how can we do it in the future? That will be my last reflection. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.